Welcome to the first live session under the Qualitative Data Coding and Analysis course. I know this is a very sought after course. So we hope that the learnings from here will really help you. And today we are joined by two of the faculty members who will be taking all these sessions in the course. So a very warm welcome to Dr. Y.K. Sandhya, who is the program lead for mental health at the George Institute for Global Health India. Sandhya received her doctoral degree in social medicine and community health from JNU New Delhi. Her work with TGI's mental health program involves working with vulnerable populations such as adolescents living in urban slum communities, transgender persons, and scheduled tribes population in India. She has a rich experience of working with marginalized communities and of co-production with them. Her research interest includes developing a gendered understanding and analysis of mental health issues in India. We are also today joined by Dr. Sreya Majumdar, who is a research fellow in the Health System Science Division at TGI India. Her expertise lies in qualitative research with a focus on designing research methods for implementation, evaluation, and intervention studies. She has led the qualitative research component of the Smart Health Pregnancy and Smart Health V3 platform projects and also contributed to the Smart Health Chat GTP initiatives. She engages with community and stakeholders through qualitative approaches that are interactive, participatory, and ethnographic. Her research interests center on developing interventions that expand reproductive choices and improve maternal health outcomes for birthing women in India. She holds a PhD in sociology and social anthropology and is also a Fulbright Fellow. So, without further ado, maybe I'll hand over to Sandhya and Shreya. And let me know if you want me to start sharing the presentation now.
Yeah. So first, let's just begin by saying hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and joining the course. I hope you find this useful. And we will be going through what exactly coding is and how you will be able to, make sense of the qualitative data that you have collected. So I'm assuming that all of you do have access to qualitative data, because without that, this course really will not be useful for you. You will need to do a substantial bit. I'm not trying to scare you, but you will need to do a substantial bit of homework, and that includes really working with your codes. So the idea is that by the time you finish this course, you will know how to, deal with the qualitative data you collected now and for subsequent studies. And I'm very glad to have Shreya with me to work through this course and to really help build your skills. So I'll hand over now to Shreya, who will take us forward. Over to you, Shreya.
Yeah, thank you, Sandhya, and welcome everyone. Really excited to go with you all through the 5 sessions that we have for this course. We really believe that this will be very useful for all of you. So, without further ado, shall we move into the presentations and the slides and the discussions?
Yes, sure. So maybe I'll just share my
So while
screen.
Akanksha is sharing the screen, can you, I assume most of you have worked with qualitative data. I mean, have you, or is there anyone who have not been able to work with qualitative data? This is somewhat the first or, very initial phases that they are engaging with qualitative data. You can drop your comments in the chat.
You can also unmute and speak up.
Yeah.
So is this the first time for all of you, or have you worked with qualitative data before?
Hi,
We
Sandhya.
have
Maruf
worked.
here.
Yeah.
So my experience of working with qualitative data is very limited. So going back to my college days when I was doing my dissertation, and I have recently been doing some work for our NIHR project, which is some bit of data collection for FGDs that we had done for evaluation part. which obviously include a lot of qualitative data analysis. So I'm closely working with the team, but not directly, haven't done the
Okay.
analysis myself
So,
yet.
Maruf, I will request you to speak up. I don't know if it is a problem with my end, but your voice is very faint. So, if everyone could just speak up a little bit. So, what I understood is that you have limited experience of qualitative data. Is that right?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
great. Would anyone else want to just volunteer? Everyone doesn't need to speak, but it'll be great if you
Yeah,
just
hi
start.
Sandhya. Hi Shreya. Good morning. This is Deepika.
Hi,
So
Deepika.
yes, we do have experience of working with like the qualitative data. But then like for me, I've also used NVivo a little bit, but yeah, but I'm not an expert and I have just used it based on my own understanding. So I'm not very sure if I've used it in the right way or not. So that is why I think this course is going to be very useful, you know, in how to proceed further. Yeah, so we have limited information about in vivo and using and analyzing qualitative data.
Great. So, with the two of you sharing your status and engagement with qualitative data, so we can somewhat understand that there are people who are starting off with how to make sense of qualitative data, how to engage with qualitative data, and also some of you who have some idea. So, what to the next slide, if you can go up.
Yes, yes, sure.
Mm, if you all can scan this and answer the first question, it's like, what is qualitative data?
So, I'm assuming everyone is conversant with Menti.
Yeah.
There are two ways in which you can use it. One is you scan the QR code with your phone. The other way, if you can't do that, is to enter Mentimeter on a web browser. And once that opens up, you just press it. And right on the top of the screen, there will be this enter the code. So you can enter the code, which is 78307200, and that will take you to the questions that Shreya is talking about. Please let
Or
us
you can scan the QR code, which will
Yeah.
take you directly to
directly to it.
yeah.
Let us know if anyone is having problems accessing the Menti.
So the question is, what is qualitative data?
I'm
Akanksha,
just
maybe
gonna
you
put
can-
it, I'm just gonna put it for 2 more seconds so that everyone can scan in, and then
Right.
maybe I'll take it to this. Shreya, do you mind copying the code in the chat as well? Because
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
sharing
You
my
can
screen so that in
certainly
any
do
ways
that.
who joins a little late can maybe also.
I will do that.
Yeah. So the responses have started coming in.
Great. So descriptive responses, descriptive information, detailed conversation, similar to descriptive, non-numerical data, non-numerical transform information. Not really sure what is quali and what you mean by quali, but anyway, subjective data. Great. Text data, exploratory data, no
Someone says
numbers.
no numbers also.
Yeah. Hmm. Descriptive information again, not easily measured. Okay, that's interesting. Unstructured textual. Not sure what you exactly mean by that. Perceptions or beliefs. Okay.
Someone also had subjective data here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's another
Subjective
thing.
data also. Yeah. So most of what you have mentioned here is correct. Qualitative data is descriptive and it is a detailed accounts that are gathered through open-ended or closed-ended methods. And we primarily used interview guides to gather this data. But qualitative data is not always limited to just interviews. We will get to it in the next slides and we can discuss about that. So qualitative data is majorly to understand what you say as the subjective experiences. subjective understanding of perceptions and beliefs. So, having said that, can you move on to the next question and answer what do you think? Why do we collect qualitative data?
I hope everyone can see the next question on their phones or their browsers as well.
I mean, what is the need for qualitative data? We already do quant surveys, collect quantitative data. What exactly is yeah, Mamta says to understand why. Mamta, would you be able to go back to the Menti and feed in your answer there? We can see the cloud together. In-depth information, correct. Detailed understanding, yes, to answer why and how. Yeah, very important. In-depth information to understand the context, yes. Thick description, yes. Any more?
There is one on experience of people.
Experience of people. Very true. So, why we collect qualitative data? So this qualitative data was, came into much use in the post-positivist era, where we understood that numerical values cannot give us an in-depth understanding of what is happening. So basically, why we collect qualitative data is to understand why people do what they do. So it is absolutely correct when you say to understand the context, to understand the experiences, to understand that time and context can change why people behave or experience things in a certain way. So it is going by the fact that there is no single truth to something, and there are different dynamics that comes into play, and qualitative data which allows you to engage more in depth with those experiences and to understand what are the ground reasons why why a phenomenon is happening and what is contributing to that behavior. So basically, to give you an example, if there is a low antenatal attendance in a clinic, the quant data can show you that, okay, there are probably only 50 people in a month who is attending antenatal, where opposed to the expected number of antenatal women coming for antenatal checkup should be 100. So we just know that there are people who are not coming. You need quant data to understand why are these people not coming, what is barring them from not going for antenatal checkups. So, Akanksha, if you can move to our
Sure.
next slide.
Yeah, I think so.
So, also you guys,
Is this the
yeah,
first slide?
yes.
Thanks.
So you can raise your hand if you have any questions or if you want to share something. We want to make this more interactive, so don't have to pause on the question till the end of this discussion. So this is basically what are the now discussing about what are the different types of qualitative data. So qualitative data, like some of you mentioned, you have FGDs, you have in-depth interviews, you have these set of interviews that you have with your target population. You have field notes and observation notes. Those are also qualitative data. These are data that you collect from the field. You also have qualitative data from various documents. It can be policy documents, it can be guidelines. So you can derive and use those data as qualitative data and incorporate it into your study. So, but then these are not the only qualitative data that you can use. You can have audios, you can have videos, you can have photographs. But for our course, since we are focusing on how to code qualitative data, we are focusing on the data that has transcripts. So moving to the next slide. Yeah. So what is qualitative data coding? So now you have collected the data and you have your transcripts. What do you do with it? How do you make any meaning out of those transcripts? So the findings and the results, they are not going to emerge from these transcripts. You need to identify the important elements, the processes, and make patterns to understand the larger story, which is the answer to the research objectives that you have. So coding is the process of analyzing qualitative text data by taking them apart to see what they yield before putting the data back together in a more meaningful way, answering the research questions. So it is a process where you identify these segments of meaning in your data, label them with codes to understand, to go back, making meaning of this very particular sentences or what you have. And then what are codes? I have been mentioning codes and coding. What basically are these things? So codes are words and short phrases, which is a representation that captures uh, the summative and also the salient features of that main idea, which is what you find in your transcript. So you need to categorize the data and retrieve the data that have similar meanings, and you place a code to it. Then basically to cluster them and establish relationships between these codes. And the process of generating these codes is what coding is. We lost our slide presentation for some reason.
So Shreya, Akanksha has mentioned that there's a power failure at her end. Would you be able to share the slides instead?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. Let me pull it out. So
I can do it if you want.
oh, that's all right, Sandhya. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay.
Others, can you please confirm the screen is visible? Yeah.
Yes,
just
yes, it's visible, Sandhya.
Great.
Okay. So I just explained what codes are, and the process of generating these codes or assigning these codes is what coding is. So Sandhya, over to you to explain it further.
So as Shreya mentioned that she's talked a little bit about codes, and I will come back to what codes are a little later on. But why do you think we code? So if you look at the screen, you see several different things, isn't it? So can first someone tell me why should we code? Why code? You have qualitative data. So why not just use it? Why go through the process of coding? Anyone can volunteer? Please unmute yourself. To make meaning out of the data. Yes, exactly. Can we have to build common understanding among researchers? Okay. What else?
Maybe to see patterns in the
To see patterns. Yes. Shreya, can you just click once, please? So basically, it helps you to make sense of your data. It helps you to systematically organize your data. So here, if you see the pictures, there are various kinds of pictures, right? Now, if I ask you, please help me make sense of these pictures, How would you do it? Can anyone volunteer? How would you make sense of these pictures? So there's a tomato, there's a sunflower, there's a bus, there is a mail van, there's butter. How would you do it? I heard someone say something.
If I want to explain in the code view, then we can structure or categorize this data based on some are fruits, some are animals, some are
Yes,
cars. In this way,
yes, yes, that's
different
right.
fields, different things.
Right, right. So you all have all got it right. One way of doing it is clustering them as the categories that they fall into. Like, can we have the next, just click once? So you can cluster them by color, for example. So you have all the reds together, all the yellows together, and all the blues together. This is one way of which you can make sense of data. There's another way to do it, as you'll very rightly mentioned. Can you click again? Just click again, please. Okay. So the second way to do it, as you rightly said, is to categorize it according to the items. So you have all the animals or insects together, all the foods together, all the flowers together, all the buses together. So you will note here, the colors of each of these are different, but they can give you another kind of meaning. So there are different ways in which you can look at the data and organize them. And that is what coding really helps you to do. It helps you to make sense of what you are just seeing as, just random information. And the way in which you gather this information together actually gives you the findings and helps you to make sense of that data and to come up with an interpretation. Can you move to the next slide, please?
Yeah, now summing this up, so coding is basically mapping the data, indexing the data, making clusters out of the data. But also what Sandhya pointed out, there is no one way of doing it. And there is no right way or wrong way of clustering it. You arrive at that, how you are going to view that data, that is clearly going to be based on the research questions that you have. So like Sandhya just showed, you can, one of your team members can code it according to the color of the items. The other one would be coding it based on what the items are. But how are you going to understand, what is the way you are going to cluster this? It is purely going to be on the research questions that you're looking answers for. So the coding basically gives you an overview of the data and also allows the researchers to make sense of that data. We have already discussed that in relation to the research questions. So that is one of the important things about coding. So it also does make data accessible and also retrievable. So every time you want to go and arrive at a finding, you are not going to go through the entire transcripts. So the codes are also work as labels, and you are able to easily access those transcripts and also retrieve them whenever and however you find it necessary. So other than that, it also increases transparency and also the validity of the data that you have collected. So it's a way of categorizing everything and making sense which is more valid, that you have found in your in-depth data collection. So this is a chart which I wanted to show to you all, like where does data coding basically lie? So you have research questions, you have a conceptual framework, then you use study methods to collect the data, then you analyze data. And don't mistake me, what I mean to say analyze data is when you're collecting data, there is something that you are always analyzing and understanding these themes in your head. Then you move on to the qualitative analysis and preliminary coding by individuals. So ideally, when you are in a group, you do your individual coding, which is the first round of coding, the first early round of coding, where you just assign labels. We'll get to this in the last slide. We'll explain this in a little more depth. You assign labels. Then you create a template. After that, you come together, you discuss, and you form a formal coding template, which is going to be the code book. Any sorts of discussions or any way, I mean, you are going to resolve that or, discuss that within the group. Then the next stage after the formal coding is done is to identify themes. That is our next stage of our analysis. Then interpret the data and draw conclusions. So basically, coding is somewhat the second step of data analysis. After you have collected the data and collection, I mean, that falls into the collection of data. And in data analysis, when you transcribe and translate the data and you have a transcripts, that is the next stage of that would be coding the data and forming your code book. If you have any questions at this point or want to share or discuss anything, please feel free to unmute, or you can also drop your questions in the chat.
Yeah, Shreya, I have a question.
Yeah.
So before coding, should we have a list already ready based on the tool, or we should actually start coding it basis the first transcript that we're reading?
So what generally happens, it might work differently for other people. You have a transcript, you familiarize yourself with your transcripts. Okay. And then you make some early bits of labeling codes that you assign. You form a temporary coding template. And you do it individually. You get together, you discuss about it, you finalize the coding code book, which will be your final template. And in the next stage, you start assigning codes to your data. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so just
In
to
case you
add
want to
to what Shreya said, yes, you can look at the questionnaire and get your codes,
yes.
but that alone would not be a great way to interpret your data, because then you will miss out on many things that you hadn't thought of when you made the questions, or unexpected information that came. So you should also go through your transcripts to find more codes, and those are codes that evolve. We will talk about this in subsequent uh, sessions where we talk about, what is inductive and deductive coding. That will clarify some of what you're saying. But you can certainly use the tool to come to your codes, but not restrict yourself to that alone. Because then you will miss out a lot of the nuances that your data has captured, and that should ideally be part of your interpretation, because we can't predict everything that was happening or the lived experiences of people. So it's great to do a combination of both, really.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
qualitative data is the essence of qualitative data is I mean, the open-ended interviews that we do is we don't restrict ourselves to our interview guides. And we let people also include their experiences of something that we might not have thought about when we prepared the interview guide. So yeah. So hopefully that answers your question, Deepika.
Yes, thank you so much.
Anyone have any other question? I haven't checked the chat yet. So,
There's nothing in the chat, Shreya, for now.
oh, okay, great. So, to the next slide. Yeah.
So then we come to the question of why should we then, engage in the systematic process when you are doing qualitative data coding? Because what Shreya showed in the previous slide makes it very clear that this is not a random thing. It's pretty systematic. There are steps you follow. So why should we do this at all? And there are really three main reasons why you should engage in a systematic process when you are conducting qualitative coding. The first, and to a small extent, Shreya did allude to it, is to maintain consistency. I'll explain each of these. The second is to promote repeatability. And the third is to ensure believability of your findings. Can we move to the next slide, please? Yeah. So the question is so when I say that we have to maintain consistency in your qualitative analysis, what do I mean by this? So basically, As Shreya said, when you start your research, even before you're doing data collection, you have a set of principles and a set of beliefs, and that is what guides the researchers' decisions and actions when they are conducting their studies. So these are basically the philosophical assumptions on which your entire study is based. And it is expected that when you do your analysis, you will follow a clear set of steps that are in line with these assumptions, that are in line with your philosophical assumptions that you have taken and you're moving on. Let me explain this with an example. So, for example, if your main purpose of research was trying to examine participants' experiences, you want to understand what are the experiences of participants when they've accessed, let's say, institutional deliveries. So, you want to understand that experience. So, what is the method that you will use? Perhaps you will decide to go in with a phenomenological approach, because phenomenology really helps you to capture, people's lived experiences. How do they experience reality? So, if your research method is phenomenological, because you want to experience or understand the experiences of participants, then the main goal of your research analysis will be to develop themes and to develop concepts that help you to represent your participants' experience. Because that is the assumption with which you started your entire research. You wanted to capture the experiences. So your goal and the analysis should clearly bring out, what is the participant's experience. So your codes, your themes, all of that will revolve around a participant's experience. On the other hand, let's say you decided to use case study as your research method, and why you use case study was because you wanted to understand a particular case, or you wanted to you wanted to highlight a unique case. So what you do is, to when you do this method, you collect data about the case, and you collect data from various different sources. So you might talk, let's say you want to understand the experience of this one woman who has gone and had an institutional delivery. So the woman is your case, right? And you collect data from various sources, not just the woman. You will talk, for example, to the providers, you will talk to the neighbor, you will talk to the mother-in-law, you will talk to so many different people to get information about that woman's experience of institutional delivery. So she's your case study, okay? And then what is the main goal that you are trying to achieve if you are using a case method? So what you're trying to do is you're trying to develop themes and models in this case, or maybe theories, to explain that one case, to describe that unique experience and try to make sense of that unique experience, and also to compare different case studies. So every woman might have different experiences, and you want to compare them. So all of this is what we say when we say that we want to maintain consistency. This is what we mean, that you start with an assumption of, this is my framework, this is what I want to understand, so I'm using this method, and therefore my analysis will follow this. That's the first one. Now going to the second one, which is, how do we make this research repeatable? So if somebody else wants to do it, how can they repeat this? So this is true across research, whether it's quantitative or whether it's qualitative. When you write up the research, for example, you mention the steps in great detail. Why do we do this? We do this so that people who read it have an extremely clear understanding of what it is that you've done. What are the steps that you did one after another? And if someone wants to replicate it, then they are able to do it just following the steps that you've done. So basically, when you're trying to promote repeatability, you have to make sure that your qualitative coding steps are well organized, so that any future researcher is able to exactly understand how you arrived at that result. So that if they want to replicate it, then they can use the same procedures and they will come to similar kind of results. So that's the second one. Now, can you move to the next slide, please? So the next slide is where we are talking and trying to understand in greater detail what believability is. So in believability, when you were analyzing the data or you were collecting the data, others who are not part of it are not privy to what you're doing, right? They are just seeing your final results. So you have to have, if you systematically demonstrate how you collected the data, how you arrived at your findings, then people will be able to trust the data and the findings. They will be able to trust the codes that you've developed. They will be able to trust the categories and the themes, and finally, the theory that you might be proposing. So, this helps to make your results and conclusions crystal clear. So, when people tell you that qualitative data is not rigorous, that's not true. It is. It depends upon the methods that you use. And if you don't use methods which are rigorous, you will get poor data. But if you use methods that are rigorous, that what I just talked about now, the other two as well as this, then you will be able to convince people that the results that you're talking about are absolutely logical. They have been arrived in a scientific way, so to speak, scientific way. And we can do this by making sure that we are answering some of these questions. First is we have to explain about how we identify this relevant information. So what is a method that we use? How did we generate the codes? So like Shreya said, you either sit by yourself and you read up the transcript, and then as you're reading it, you say, I think this sentence means this. So you write out a little phrase over there, right? So for example, let's go back to this woman seeking delivery. And we say, so the woman tells her story, and she says, when my labor pains started, then we called the ambulance because we wanted to get transported to the hospital using the ambulance. The Asha told us to do this. So your little code might be, okay, Asha gave information about ambulance and the family tried to contact the ambulance. So these are the two bits of information that you just got from this one sentence that the woman said. So one person sits and reads up everything, comes up with codes. Then you come together as a team and then you discuss those codes and then you finalize and crystallize it. So this is a very clear step that you are showing that you're doing it first individually and then you're doing it together. So it's an iterative process. So this is how you explain, this is how we arrive at the code. Then you go on to explain what the meaning of the code is. How did you move from a code to a category and what does a category mean? And then finally, how themes are generated. So now I'm using these terms, codes and categories and themes, and perhaps you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. So I'll just explain a little bit about what each of these terms mean. So as Shreya said, codes, suppose let's say we take another example. Now we had COVID, right? A lot of our students were forced to go on to online education. And then after COVID was over, we said, okay, let's go and do a little study and try to understand what challenges or what were the experiences of people when they were accessing online education. And when you speak to them, then you might find out a lot of them are talking about challenges. Okay, so they're saying that some people said that we didn't have a smart device, we didn't have a computer, so we couldn't even join the class. Other people said we could join the class, but there was so much of racket in the house because it's not like I have a separate room. So there's my mother cooking and there's a maid coming in and there was a lot of distraction. So that's a challenge, right? And these challenges are at the level of the person. So your code becomes that you don't have access to a smart device. That's one code. The second is you're being distracted by family members. So that's your second code. And what is your category? These are personal. It is something that the person at their level is facing. So your category is a personal challenge. And what is the theme? The theme is a challenge of online education. Now, in another example with the same theme of challenges of online education, you can have a category which is institutional in nature. So there are institutional challenges. And what would the codes be? The codes would look something like, there aren't enough staff. So there weren't enough staff to set up the system. There weren't enough staff to, take the classes, or that the curriculum was poorly designed because it was not meant for an online platform. But then you just started taking classes online and you couldn't build that connect with your students. So this is how you can use, these are the differences between codes, categories, and themes. Another simple way to understand it is, let's say we are baking cake. So when you bake cake, you need eggs, you need flour, you need butter, you need sugar, you need, say, buttermilk, right? These are all your raw ingredients. These are your codes. And then you want to categorize them. So you put all the wet ingredients together. So egg, buttermilk, wet ingredients. Dry ingredients are your butter and your flour and baking powder and all that. Those are your categories. Then you combine all of them together and you bake it and you come up with a cake, which is your final theme. So when you're talking about your results, When you're describing results, you typically describe themes. You do not describe codes. So let's say you bake this chocolate cake and then you give it to people and people say, wow, this cake is excellent. This cake looks pretty. I love the chocolate taste in it, but they will not describe the cake by saying, oh, there are eggs in this cake and there's chocolate in this cake and there's flour in this cake. That's not usually the way people would describe the cake. So what Shreya was saying is that when you are coding and you come up with your themes and categories, you actually change the nature of that data and you give it an entirely new set of meaning, a meaning that, initially didn't exist. So you have created that meaning from the raw material that you have. And this is the beauty of qualitative analysis, where you use all these separate raw ingredients and you end up with a product that you present with people, which are your findings, and they could be quite different from the raw ingredients because they come together to build or to create a new layer of meaning. So I'll hand over now to Shreya again for the next slide.
Okay. So this is a very small exercise that we wanted to do with you. And just a moment, my taskbar is covering most part of my screen. Okay, so you can see this is a sample transcript. And you can see there are different colors over here. And there are different labels on the side. What you can also see is a catalog of what these color means on the left. So basically, this is basically a code book, what you call as a code book. Which color denotes which code and where you can find that categorized and cataloged is what a code book is. So some in different cases, there are different ways people code. So what we are showing here is what you would do if you are coding a transcript. I mean, you can do that for smaller projects. You can use Microsoft Word or even print out your transcripts and start highlighting with different colors. So you color code it. There are times for larger projects with large amount of data, we use the qualitative softwares like NVivo, Atlas TI, which most of you are probably familiar with. We use those to manage these codes. So, but the basic of what this code book is to just have a catalog, know what the labels are, and you know what each label means. So there are also times when you have a huge amount of data, people might assign codes in their code book, like have a code, also assign maybe C1, D2. It's based on how they find it easier to go back to their data. So you don't have to do any particular way. You can adapt to whichever way is more convenient for you. So color coding is an easier process when it is a small number of data. But in a larger amount of data, we use qualitative software to manage our qualitative coding and analysis. So coming back to this sample transfer. Yes, Deepika.
Yeah, Shreya, just a question in my mind.
Yeah.
Like from the screen, we can understand that you have actually coded each sentence. It's very few words that are left. So, from your experience, what do you think? While coding, we should actually code every sentence so that we can utilize it at the end, or sometimes we think that this sentence is not very useful and we leave it, probably. But then, how should we do it? We should actually code it, whether we find it is useful or not, basis the outcome that we want.
Yeah. So, Deepika, that's a good question because coding qualitative data also comes from the perspective of the researchers. Although you are answering the research questions, but ideally, what I do is not try to leave. Like you can see over here, the uh, I mean, whoever coded this did not code as I noted in the marginal comments. That's not very relevant. But there are times when you feel that at that point of time that the code, I mean, it is not relevant to your data. But there are also times when there is a narration and you feel it's not relevant, but there are deeper meanings to why they said that and what they said that. So when you code the data, it is a good practice to not leave things out, because at that point of time you feel that that is not relevant. But that not might be the case when you are processing the data further, you are coding and trying to create themes. So in the first bit, it is better that you code your data, because when you're asking these questions to your participants, I mean, unless you ask them, why did you not go to an antenatal clinic, and they say, I had chicken biryani for breakfast. But these seem like two very different reasons. I mean, not related to each other. But there might be, when you read the data, there might be meanings like, okay, I probably had to source chicken biryani for my breakfast. That did not leave me with enough time to go for an antenatal checkup. So there are also, I mean, in qualitative data, it is not always that, everything that the participant mentions in words is the only meaning. There are meaning even beyond it. And that is what you do when you are trying to code and analyze qualitative data. Does that make sense? And Sandhya, if you want to
Yeah,
add.
if I may, I just add. So I completely concur with Shreya that you should not leave out anything because you think it's irrelevant. Now, taking this chicken biryani for breakfast example, maybe the woman was forced to make chicken biryani, let's say, by her in-laws, right? So the barrier there is that the in-laws, when you interpret it, if you leave out the chicken biryani, the only information you get is a woman didn't go. She didn't go to attend, the ANC, the antenatal clinic, but you will not get the reason why. Now, the chicken biryani, if you're a good researcher, you would ask them, why did you cook chicken biryani on the day when you had, an antenatal clinic scheduled? And then perhaps the woman would have said, because, I didn't want to do it, but they felt like eating it, so they forced me to make it. So then I had to make it and I missed the time. So now clearly you have 2 to 3 things, which is one, the one wanted to go. She knew it's important. Two, her family, her in-laws are not supportive. They want to eat chicken biryani when they know that there's this day that she should be going. So these are the 2 other pieces of information that you would get from that one chicken biryani, which you might think is irrelevant and therefore leave. So I totally strongly recommend that at the first cut, you code everything. In fact, when we didn't have the software and we would do coding on Word documents, the standard instructions that we were given is that when you finish off with your coding, with your transcript, the Word document in which your transcript is there should be blank, because everything should be cut pasted in some code or the other. So I think that is something that we should definitely do at the first step. Later on, when you do, as Shreya said, the analysis, you might decide or you might think this is not as important. So we leave it aside and we focus on other things, but certainly have everything coded in the first round. I
Okay.
hope this helps.
Yes, very helpful. Thanks.
So, on a similar but a different note, when you are looking at a transcript, you might be looking at that individual document, but you need to also remember that this is a transcript which is not taken out of the entire context. And when I say taken out of entire context, because is what I mean by this is there are different other documents, like Sandhya pointed in the discussion earlier. You have a case study, you corroborate facts with different other sources. So you are speaking with a woman and she says a certain thing, I cook chicken biryani and I did not come for the antenatal clinic. So what you infer from there is that she is responsible for cooking breakfast. And probably she is this only person responsible for cooking breakfast, because there was no substitute for her who would cook chicken biryani, so that she could go for a checkup, which she wanted to go probably. So what do? You identify something over here. You go, you have other transcripts and other sources. You verify those facts over there. Is it a recurring pattern, or is it a very exclusive thing in this case? So basically, again, going back to what we just discussed, the reason why you should not decide beforehand that if something is relevant or not is only when you have done most bit of the coding, and you see, and the patterns that you try to look for and the categories that you're trying to create is not based on just one transcript taken out of context. It is the whole data that you have collected, and you cumulatively look at it, in a larger way after you have done this systematic process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and the coding process actually helps you to get similar information from different transcripts, into one code. So that's how you make sense of your data. As Shreya very rightly pointed out, qualitative data is not just one transcript, right? It's a lot of stuff. So this will help you really to make sense and draw from other sources of information to enrich the interpretation that you will finally arrive.
Yeah, so you make patterns, you draw relationships. There are different contexts, like, again, going back to our chicken biryani, it might be a indication of one process that might be happening, but it might be relevant to some other processes as well. It might be an indicator of that the woman is socioeconomically in a better off place in a rural area where she can afford to cook chicken biryani, which is very different from the context that we just spoke about. So, like the categories that Sandhya made you do, the exercise, there are different ways you can use that information and make sense of an information. So, before we go into further discussion, I had some questions for you. This is a very small transcript where a teacher gives a review to a student on their research work. So you can see some of the codes on the sites, and these are just the first round of coding. Can you you can unmute yourself and talk, or drop your ideas on the text. Can you create a theme out of these codes, and, and explain why those themes are, generating itself? You have the colors coded, you have the codes on the side. What are the themes do you think are coming, generating itself from these?
I think it can be praise, suggestions, and criticism. Three things.
Sorry, Hassan, I'm not able to hear you very clearly.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's much better.
Okay, I think we can generate three themes from here. One is criticism, another is suggestions, and another one is praise.
Right. So when you just say it's suggestions and praise, which is correct, but you have categorized them into very broad two categories. But does it really, when you say there are this transcript has suggestions and praise, is that it? Does it explain enough? You're trying to understand and get to the themes of what this talks about. Can you think a little bit more of what the themes are? What these codes together are, you clustered these codes and they imply a theme. Can you think a little bit more? Okay, I can give you an example to help you think. So here, when you look at these codes, the teacher talks about the writing quality and clarity. And I can see editing, criticism, suggestions, and the overall criticism that is mentioned over here is one of that. So one theme could be writing quality and clarity. Can you suggest some other? And do you see how I'm getting at that? Or you might disagree.
Yes, I can understand now. Another can be writing gaps.
Writing gaps, yes, great. But can you not categorize the writing gaps under writing quality and clarity?
Yeah, I can. I can.
So would you want to try again if there is some other themes that you can identify? What I can also see is she talks a lot about the organization and the structure of the paper or whatever the student has sent. So she gave
Another one
a
can
lot of
be
idea
writing
about,
structure.
yes,
And another one can be the writing source or reference.
writing source, correct, yes.
Another can be the writing. Another can be the recommendations on the writing or the suggestions.
But is that a theme?
Suggestions for improving.
So what you're talking about are quotes. You want to make a theme. Themes are something which is more generalizable, which will be like I mentioned, she is talking about the writing quality and the clarity. She is also talking about, the organization and structuring of these. So these are applicable in other writing area. I mean, other relevant proposals or write-ups that the students must have incorporated.
So
So
in the
basically,
chat,
yeah,
Renu has mentioned that one theme could be improving academic quality, and the
yes,
second theme could be constructive support and motivation.
yeah, those are great themes. Renu. So basically, what we are arriving at is when you analyze this transcript, what you infer from this is what is important for you to do to make a, I mean, based on what we are dealing, the transcript that we are dealing with right now, it talks about how you can improve and better your writing. So the teacher mentions about the writing quality and clarity. So you are going to mention that the writing clarity and the quality is something which is important to have a better transcript. When you organize and structure, the organization and structure of a transcript of a write-up makes it better. Also, what Renu has mentioned, constructive support and motivation. These are, these are also things that can develop and help in writer being better. So it's like there are takeaways from this transcript when after you code it and you categorize them under themes. But also when you say that constructive support and motivation, which Renu has mentioned, what are the codes that you're pulling them under this theme? So,
Shreya, sorry to come in. We've already passed the time for the session. It's
yeah.
11 o'clock. Shall I ask the participants to stay back for 5 more minutes if you need that?
Is that all? We are almost nearing the
Yeah.
end.
Okay.
If we could, then we can just summarize.
Yeah.
So
Anyway, I mean, we
Priya, you
don't
could
need.
just mention a couple of codes under the constructive support and motivation, and then we can close.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, for constructive support and Renu, since you mentioned this, do you want to unmute and suggest what are the codes you would like to, which is contributing to this theme?
Yeah, the codes which are, they are acknowledging the effort here. There are codes that acknowledge effort while also pointing out criticism. I mean, it is more like constructive criticism to guide improvement. So those codes can come under, the constructive support and motivation. Like they said, facility. If you want to send me, there's a news article. They're saying, I mean, while they're giving criticism, they're also telling how to improve. So I think that resources suggestion, then organization suggestions, those all goes into constructive support and motivation.
Yeah, I agree. So organization suggestions. So anything that is helping support the betterment of the quality or betterment of the piece is is something that could go under these things. So summing up, since we have crossed our time, basically what I want to mention is there is no one way of categorizing these themes. Again, you need to, so there will be moments when you're going to be confused, and you might feel that, oh, what this citation criticisms, it may go under constructive support, it may go under writing clarity and quality. I mean, one code can go under a lot of themes. So in those situations there can be overlaps and it's very confusing. So in these situations you go back to your research questions and you try to find out what exactly, I mean, how do you answer those research questions from these themes? So it will help you understand and be less confused of where to put these codes under which kinds of themes. So having said that, I will hand it over to Sandhya to sum up and give the final conclusion of this session for today.
Thank you, Shreya. So I hope the session was useful in setting the context and helping you to understand what coding is and giving you a broad view of, how codes lead to themes and then finally to the analysis. Just one disclaimer, this course is not about the technical aspects of NVivo. NVivo is just used as a tool, and the only discussion we will have in this course relating to NVivo is extremely basic, related to how you can use it as a tool for coding. There are several features on NVivo. We can certainly share videos in case you want to know more about the features of NVivo. That can be done, but this course is not about NVivo. It's about coding, and coding can be done even without NVivo. So please don't worry if you don't have the software. All you need, as Shreya just pointed out here, is a hard copy, color pencils, or a computer with a Word document, and you can still code. So the thing is actually reading the data to understand and draw your codes and then make sense of it. The tool can be anything. So we look forward to the second session where we will take this forward.